Hi, I'm Wendy Ventura from Blossoming Midlife. Thanks for joining me today. We're up to day 13 of the 40-day marriage challenge that we've been doing. I'd love to hear how you went yesterday with keeping short accounts. Hopefully today you're feeling a bit lighter and free, and that you're not holding anything against your spouse, and that will put you in a good headspace for today's challenge, which is about choosing to love. So I guess over the next 24 hours, the goal is to choose a loving act that you can do towards your spouse, and to do it regardless of how you feel and regardless of how they respond. And you've probably noticed a bit of a theme over the last few days in choosing to serve, choosing to, what was the other one? Choosing to respect our spouse and choosing to love our spouse regardless of how we feel. And that's not to say that our feelings aren't important, but that our feelings don't control us. And if you want to hear more about the importance of feelings or how to process them, you can watch that in other videos. But today is all about how to love. And I think when we get married, we have this idea that love is a feeling, but when we commit to the covenant of marriage, we're committing to choose to act lovingly towards our spouse, regardless of how we feel. And, it's unconditional, and Jesus is our example of unconditional love. He loved us when we didn't love him, when we rebelled against him, and he died for us even when we were still against him. And we can follow his example by choosing to love our spouse regardless of how they respond to this love. And I think God knows that this is not an easy task, which is why he says that by this will all men know that we are his disciples, as we love one another. So we can really only do it successfully in his strength and through his power, and through us choosing to do that each day. I know when I was at the lowest point in my marriage, I was seeing a counsellor at the time, and she suggested to me that what she does when she doesn't feel loving towards her spouse is at night when he falls asleep, she lays her hand on him and she prays over him, and she prays for wisdom and strength and guidance to know how to love him. And so I started adopting that practice, as I also started working through forgiveness and overcoming bitterness and learning how to love my husband again. And yeah, it's definitely worth the effort and the time. And what loving your spouse would look like is sometimes surprisingly different to what you would expect, and obviously it's going to differ from person to person. So for one person, loving your spouse may mean even confronting them over some sin, and holding them accountable to that and supporting them through overcoming it. To another person, it might mean turning the other cheek. Or to another person, the best way they can love their spouse might be to give them a big hug coming home from work. So it's different for all of us. But sadly today, many couples, when they stop feeling in love in their relationship, then faced with problems and hard times, they tend to take the way out of their marriage of separating and thinking they're going to be happier and better off. But I'm thankful that we were able to work through our problems and to commit to the covenant vows that we'd made to each other. And I never thought that we'd get to the place where we are today. So I know it's not always possible for everybody. And definitely when there's abusive behaviours or destructive behaviours in the relationship, it's definitely wise to separate until such a time that you're able to come back together safely. So if in doubt of how to love your spouse, I guess put yourself in their shoes and think about what would be best for them before you speak or act, because what we think might be loving for us might not be loving for them. So in a later challenge I'm going to talk more about the love languages, but if you know your spouse's love language, then you can meet them on their level in a way that's heartfelt to them and will deepen your connection of intimacy. So what could love look like in action for you today? Yeah, some suggestions could be, obviously, do something that's going to push you, stretch you, strengthen your marriage. Don't just think, oh, I said good morning to my spouse and smiled at them this morning, so I've ticked the box of acting lovingly. Do something that you don't normally do. Push yourself a bit further. So maybe it could be supporting your spouse in a hobby that previously you've, laughed at or made negative comments about, or it could be coming alongside your spouse to watch TV with them and just snuggle up with them, and if that's not something that you would normally do, or maybe rushing to the door when they come home today and giving them a big hug, just making them feel loved. So just to recap, today's challenge is to choose a loving act towards your spouse over the next 24 hours and to do it regardless of how you feel or how they respond. All right, thanks everybody. I'd love to hear how you go, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.